One of our greatest unsolved mysteries of our universe is whether it's even real. While it may intuitively seem to be, after all, we do live in and interact with reality our entire lives, the truth is that the matter is far more complicated than you might think. In fact, it's so complicated that physics, science, and math itself cannot rule out that this universe may not even exist at all. In fact, it's entirely possible that we live in a computer simulation. The idea that this universe isn't real isn't a new one. In fact, it's very old. All religions are to varying extents based on the idea that humans, along with the universe and everything inside of it, was created by a supernatural being or God. Many brilliant people, including Nick Bostrom and Elon Musk, believe that there is a chance that this universe is in fact just a base reality, and that we could be living in a simulation of a further and much more advanced civilization. His argument is this: 40 years ago we had Pong, a simple game where a ball was bounced around with a bar on each side. Of course, the graphics weren't realistic, but 40 years later, we now have photorealistic technology. Between this short period of 40 years, the photorealistic technology has vastly improved, and it's getting better each year. If we keep improving this technology at its current rate, which I should mention is pretty rapid, 10,000 years from now you can imagine how realistic this technology would seem. Maybe even so much so that you wouldn't be able to differentiate the simulation from reality. There is another possibility though. It's conceivable that in 10,000 years, civilization will entirely be gone because there's a ceiling to our advancement.
If civilization stops advancing, then that may be due to some calamitous event that erases civilization.
But another possibility is that we could keep advancing, and assuming that everything in the physical world can be simulated, eventually we'll simulate ourselves. Nick Bostrom thinks we'll send tiny self-replicating robots to other planets, which would turn the planet into a huge computer. And some of these simulations would start making their own simulations, and these simulations could in turn create their own simulations, and so on. In this scenario, there are billions of universes that are indistinguishable from our own. This means chances are we are in one of the simulated universes. And given the other possibility, which is that human civilization has an inevitable ceiling, Musk thinks we better hope that we're in a simulation.
Either we're going to create simulations that are indistinguishable from reality, or civilization will cease to exist.
There is yet another possibility, which is that future humans just don't want to run simulations. Maybe they think it might take too much power, it's unethical, or maybe they just have other priorities. So to recap, there are three possibilities. 1. Humans go extinct before we're able to run a simulation this big. 2. Humans don't run simulations because it's wrong or irrelevant. And number 3. We are living in a simulation. Elon Musk thinks that there's only a very tiny chance that we're in scenario 1 or 2. The philosopher Nick Bostrom thinks it's more like a 20% chance that we are in a simulation. But if you're not into futuristic predictions, Bostrom thinks that the argument also provides some other rewards. If we are living in a simulation, there is a higher level being, but it's some version of us. To get deeper into the topic, we must understand reality. Well, what is reality? It's kind of an unfair question. You see, your reality is much more different than mine, mostly because the way I perceive reality is different than the way you perceive reality. And to perceive reality, one's senses must work together to create their own version of reality. Your brain is entirely dependent on sensory input. Your eyes, ears, sense of touch, taste, and smell all determine how your brain perceives the universe around you. But senses may not always tell the truth, as optical illusions show us. As a result, if you could trick all 5 senses at the same time, you could make a person believe in something that isn't real. This is called the brain in a vat thought experiment, and is a philosophical concept that underlies the Matrix series of movies. The idea is that if your brain was in a jar being fed sensory information with electrodes, you would live in a virtual reality forever, never knowing that there was an entire other real universe outside. There's always been talk in physics that does seem rather weird that certain fundamental values in the universe are just right for life to exist. While that may be due to the possibility that there's an infinite number of parallel universes that exist and we happen to be the one that's just right, there's also another possibility that there's only one universe and the values naturally happen to be perfect. The problem is that the odds of this are astronomical. Scientists suspect that we might be able to tell if our reality is a simulation by studying the behavior of cosmic rays and determining how they scatter. If it really does end up being consistent with the simulation, then things could get very interesting.